Hey, 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 welcome to Lunch Therapy, Interview Friday. Today is a very, very special day because I have a guest that is all Seattle, this fellow. His name is John Keister. Many of you grew up watching his show Almost Live, which was a sketch comedy show on King 5 in Seattle. So I'm very excited to have him here because he's super fun and super inspirational to me. Joel, you live in Los Angeles. Why are you Seattle? Which would be a very Seattle thing to say. You sold out, Joel. You went down to Los Angeles. And I'm going to tell you right now why I'm Seattle. I'm going to make my case. Everybody has different Seattle references, I guess. For me, why am I Seattle? You know, by the way, people that are from Seattle, like perhaps Guignell, Keister. Maybe you can put in the chat room what makes you Seattle. I'll tell you what makes me Seattle is I went to the very first Seahawks game. Yeah, pre-season. And I also had a hero growing up, and my hero was the guy who drove the Bubbleator. A lot of you don't know about the Bubbleator. Rick Steves was my piano teacher. Yeah, many of you know that. I brag about it all the time. Let's see what Heather says. How dare you come to Seattle without visiting us? Go Dogs. We have some Seattle people here. Enough, Joel. Bring on Keister. No, I got to go through my case here. I got to make my case. I ripped my pants sneaking into the Woodland Park Zoo. I dove off the ferry dock in Edmonds and the chairlift at Stevens Pass. To me, a bag of dicks is delicious. And I memorized the announcement at the SeaTac terminal, the little train that takes you between the terminals. This vehicle is now departing. Please hold on to a poster handrail and check the display panel map for your next destination. I think they've changed it now, but that was back in the day. I saw Grizzly Adams' bear in Squim and got spit on by some llamas. I did not put soap in the Edmonds fountain, contrary to popular belief, but I did put a paper bag on my head, and I entered the Edmonds parade and threw sardines to the kids. I mined golf balls from the lake at the Seattle golf course and then sold them at the Jackson golf course. Let's see who's here. John Curry. He's going to be a guest on the show. He knows the Bubbleator. Yeah, he's going to be on next week, John. John is an actor here in Los Angeles as well. Another sellout from Seattle. Fried clams at Ivers. I don't know if he's a sellout like me. Joey Diaz got his bag of dicks after a bad comedy show in Seattle. Many of you from Seattle know that Dick's is a drive-in where you get wonderful artery-corroding hamburgers. I palmed Ross Schaefer's head. Yes. Perhaps I'll have to talk to John about that. What else? I painted D&D figures at the American Eagle Hobby Shop on Greenwood Avenue. That is super Seattle. And I watched Almost Live. So let's get into this show. I'm gonna get myself a modem. 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 All right. So today we're gonna have this incredible guest, John Keister. But first we have to do our breathing because that's what we do on this show. We breathe. John is in the waiting room. I'm sure my assistant, I think my assistant Boney is giving him a hard time. He's already pre-interviewing him or something. I don't know. Matt's going to pretend that I don't know what the American Eagle Hobby Shop is. Yeah, it's probably a good idea to pretend that. All right, so we're going to do our breaths and then we're going to get into this Interview Friday. So in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Heather got dicks yesterday. Let it go. John Curry says, dude, I have a great drunken runs to Dick's on 45th stories. Yes, we're going to have to hear those. On Wednesday, John's going to be on the show. Hopefully we can hear some Dick's drive-in humor. I just ordered Dick's via DoorDash. I wonder, when you order it via DoorDash, does the air conditioning suck your money away when you put it on the... Because that's part of the fun, right? In through the nose, out through the toes. Thanks, Neil, for looking out for me. There was a car coming at me. Let it go. I'm a little jacked up. I don't know if you can tell. I'm a little jacked up on caffeine and Keister. So here we go. In through the nose, out through the toes. Forget about it. I don't think that's how you spell forget about it. Let it go. Bada bing. All right. I'm feeling like I need one more breath. One more breath. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. If you have any questions for John, make sure you put them in the chat room. Don't distract him too much with your weird shenanigans, but we're certainly welcome to chat along, and please do. So today, John Keister. He was the host of Saturday Night Live. No, he was the host of Almost Live in Seattle, which was a sketch comedy show that ran from 1984 to 1999. We were really into it. It's a show that was popular to the Northwest. It was so popular that at one point they moved it to Saturday nights, and they pushed Saturday Night Live back a half an hour just so you could watch Almost Live. I'm not sure why they called it Almost Live. We're going to have to ask him that. He also had a show the same show, some iteration of it, that ran on Comedy Central from 1992 to 1993. Almost Live won almost 40 Emmys and several national awards. And John is an icon of comedy in Seattle. But I'm going to let you listen to him tell the story. Greg Wardala, yes, I am going to get to the interview. Here we go. It's Interview Friday. Yay! Here he is, John Keister, the man, the myth, the legend.
Hi, Joel.
It's great to see you. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Doing well.
He's coming to us straight from the Seward Park area of Seattle.
Yes.
It's so good to have you here.
Thank you.
So, John.
Yes.
You started out in comedy, right? I mean, did you start out being a stand-up comedian, or you came at it from a completely different direction?
I started out as a journalist. I worked and was the editor of the newspaper at the University of Washington. You went to the UW, right?
Yeah.
You remember the UW Daily? You remember the campus
of course.
Newspaper?
A daily newspaper.
I edited that, and then I went on to work on a paper called The Rocket. Do you remember The Rocket magazine?
Of course.
And in the course of doing The Rocket, I started getting into stand-up down at Swanee's. You probably know the Comedy Underground.
Yeah, of course.
And worked down there a lot. And I decided to write about comedy. There wasn't a lot of journalism being done about comedy, so I was interviewing comics and working on that. That just sort of coincidentally. That was happening, but then I got a call came in to the Rocket because they wanted somebody. There was a new show starting called Rev, which I believe we've talked about. You knew that show.
So Rev was like a show where they showed music videos, and this was like before MTV.
Right. It was just before MTV. It was a very popular show.
We watched it.
Because it was the only it was the only source of music videos in Seattle, and got huge. Viewership, and they wanted someone to come on and do the local music news, and so I did a segment called The Rocket Report, where I talked about that sort of stuff, and I put in some jokes. I was just starting to do comedy, and I put some jokes into that. And just coincidentally, they were starting to develop a show. The program director at King at that time was he was very into local programming. He was known nationally as a innovator of local programming, and they were trying to get a local comedy show up and running. And he saw the stuff I was doing on Rev, and he said, "Why don't you try to work on this new show that we're doing?" And that's how it all started. Was really that
do you
phone
think
call.
local programming in Seattle was particularly strong? Because I know we really paid attention to it when we were kids. Even the news.
Yes, it was.
You know?
Yes, local programming in Seattle and Chicago and Minneapolis. There's 2 or 3 cities where it had extremely strong local programming. The major markets, their stuff was actually very, in my opinion, it was very weak because they were so concentrated on the industry that was going on nationally there that they didn't. I mean, it was kind of, just the news was just traffic accidents and sports. And in places like Chicago, Seattle, Minneapolis, certain other markets, there was a lot of extremely good electronic journalism. And because it was good, it tended to attract the kind of behind the scenes people, like the photographers and whatnot and editors. They were attracted by other people who were doing that kind of good work. So we had extremely good people who were doing just the real basic things like photography and editing and lighting, because good photographers draw other good photographers. And so I think on balance, yes, the journalism and local programming in Seattle was probably as good as it was being done anywhere else in the country. Yeah.
Did you grow up watching like JP Patches and that kind of local programming?
Well, JP Patches was, absolutely my hero growing up. And that, again, very few people, I mean, there were, every city had its own children's television program, but not every city had a character like Chris Weddes, who was JP Patches. There was the Bozo show in Chicago was legendary, and Soupy Sales in New York. And there was a guy in New Orleans who was like a monster movie kind of guy that was, I mean, anyone from that area knew the Morgus, his name was.
Yeah, I remember that too. I've seen that
he had this,
on YouTube or something.
Yes, and he had, he lived in one of those amazing New Orleans graveyards, and would come out, and he was incredibly, regionally popular. And then there was a guy in Cincinnati called Goulardi, which the comic who's the host of Price is Right, and what's the with the flat top, what's his name? I'm blanking his name.
You mean
who I'm talking about?
You mean the guy right now?
No, he did. What was his name?
Oh God! Somebody in the chat room.
Drew Carey.
Oh, Drew Carey. Oh, yeah, right now. Okay, Drew Carey. Yeah.
Yeah, he would wear T-shirts with. There's a guy in Cleveland, Goulardi, who would do things like kids would send him in their model cars that they'd worked on, and he would blow them up with firecrackers and things like that, and do all these crazy.
And so Drew Carey was like a fan of that when he was a kid.
Oh,
or something?
Enormous! So he would wear Goulardi shirts like on his show.
He used to have that shirt that said "As seen on TV."
Yeah, right.
I like that. He has good
but
shirts.
Anyway, yeah. So around the country there were like JP Patches was like he was like your favorite crazy uncle who would like let the kids have a sip of beer, and go out in the backyard and shoot off firecrackers, just do the stuff that your parents never wanted. He'd be like, "Oh, come on, we'll do this. Just don't tell your mom and dad." That was that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, he was fantastic.
I loved that. Did you ever sit in on or were you ever on any of the JP Patches shows?
No, actually, that's a very good story. I was signed up. My Cub Scout troop pack was signed up to go on, and we had to take my father had to take a trip to Yakima on business, the beautiful,
Vegas.
city of Yakima, and And while we were there, my mother said, "Now, I didn't want to tell you before we left, but this is the day that your Cub Scout pack was going to be on JP Patches." And I went ape shit. You know, I just went,
Oh, no.
I went nuts.
I
was
would have
like,
lost it.
What?
I would have lost
I
it.
mean, I couldn't believe the level of betrayal was like,
Deep.
I was like,
Deep
what?
wound.
What are you talking? And like, she just didn't sort of understand how important that was to me.
Yeah.
And it was, it was bad.
Well, that was one of the most popular long-running local programs ever.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And there's a whole wing on Children's Hospital in Seattle named after him because he'd go there and kids who are in bad shape would just suddenly get so excited to see him that he actually would raise their spirits, and so they could I mean, I think he probably saved a lot of lives actually doing that. I honestly believe that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So parents are torturous. How could they do this to John?
Yes. Thank you, Kamala.
They don't even realize. But you did do a skit with
Mm-hmm.
Chris that I have here. I'm going to play it right now.
Okay.
Now. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a bit of thought, and it is the influence that children's television has on the psyche of an entire generation. Now take, for example, say, old Brakeman Bill and Captain Puget. Now, they represent the fear that a child would have of a parent abandoning them by means of, say, a train or a boat. But J.P. Patches, he instilled this sense of security with his permanent dwelling, albeit that dwelling was just a shack down by the city dump.
Oh, what I wouldn't give for a large sock full of horse manure. I mean, what do you do when you get stuck in a movie line in front of a guy like this?
Hey, it's a free country. I'm entitled to my opinion,
Yeah, but you have to shout it into my ear, and aren't you ashamed to be pontificating like that? And and the thing is, J.P. Patches. You talk about, you don't know anything about J.P. Patches.
Oh, really? Well, I happen to teach a course out at the University of Washington called TV, Culture, and Clowns. I think my opinions on J.P. Patches are extremely valid.
Yeah, well, I just happen to have J.P. Patches over here. Look, J.P. Patches.
Well, I heard what you were saying. You know nothing of my work. How you ever became a Patches pal is beyond me. You probably watched Stan Morrison, didn't you? Didn't you, Stan Morrison?
Boy, if only real life were like this.
Yes.
Got my JB bobblehead.
Oh
there,
man, I need to get one of those. I don't know why.
Hope you got the reference in that video, Joel. You understand what that video is, don't you? I hope so.
It's from Woody Allen's.
Yes, very good, very good.
Manhattan, perhaps.
Annie Hall. That was.
Hey,
Annie.
wow.
That was
Boy, that was
good,
quick.
Yes.
That was quick. I came up with that.
Yeah,
one.
here's that. And look what else I got. Very rare.
Oh
got
my
the JP
God!
Patches.
Look at that.
Look, I got yes.
I love it. I gotta get that. I gotta get a Patches Pal shirt. I think is what I need.
Yeah, they have those. This is from
Those
Archie McPhee, but this
classic.
is very old. This is actually from the early '60s. This is a plush.
Really?
JP. Yeah, this is a very rare, very valuable. Yeah.
Do you have a Nordy doll though? You know those? Do you ever see the Nordy doll?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No,
Remember
I don't have
when Nordstrom's was just like one shoe store?
Yes, and then Nordstrom Best, and they merged with what was called Best Apparel, so it was Nordstrom Best.
Nordstrom Best.
And that was they were a shoe store. Then Best was a clothing store. Then it was Nordstrom Best, and then it just became Nordstrom.
You know it. And
Yeah,
Matt Wright knows
we're
that
really
too.
getting into the minutiae.
Now we're getting into it.
Joel,
So I do want to play another thing here that's really interesting.
Okay.
This is the Rocket Report, and I just want to ask you first of all a little setup. When you they invited you to work for Rev, the show,
Yeah.
right? And you were a journalist. You were reviewing bands in Seattle, right?
Yeah,
And this was like in the early 80s, like 84.
Yeah, I was what you're going to see, I was like about 25, 26 years old.
You were 25. So this was like the beginning of the grunge era.
Yeah.
You know, and you were reporting, you were right there reporting on it. You were kind of the opposite of the grunge kind of look. You know, you were very like put button up and tie, and you know what I mean?
Well, actually, you know what? You're kind of, see, the thing is, being as old as I am,
yes,
the wearing of a suit during the punk rock days was somewhat ironic, and the idea of wearing a suit
love it.
actually was sort of a radical.
Yeah, you're
was
right.
thought of as like a sort of radical
Totally.
thing that you're sort of playing on those. It's like we drove around. Like if you look at the punk videos, they're driving around in big Cadillacs and things
Yeah,
like that.
that's true.
And
You're
it was
right.
sort of an ironic thing. Whereas, yeah, as the years went on, the grunge folks, yeah, actually kind of more adopted kind of the stuff like
the
that
heavy
we
metal
wore in the 70s,
kinda
the
look.
kind of heavy metal hippie,
You know,
kinda
Matt Wright here
look.
was in the band Gas Huffer back in the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the lead
Gashuffer.
singer of Gas Huffer.
Way to go, Matt. Yes, I remember Gashuffer. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
we
show this.
wrote about them.
Did
you
you?
know, in the Rocket? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I bet
they
you
were,
did.
Gashuffer made it in the Rocket
They were big
a
time.
few times.
So this clip that I'm going to show. Oh wait, one other thing I wanted to ask you.
He probably knows Jeff Gilbert. You know Jeff Gilbert?
Probably does. He probably does. He's already. This is the pre-chat. Okay, before you say that
okay.
John wasn't grunge, we need to address the fact that
You
I
got-
often
oh,
got him
he-
confused
he-
with Bruce
yeah.
Pavitt.
He got me confused with Bruce Pavitt. Yeah. Yes. Well, Pavitt was quite a. I don't know how would I put it. He was quite a free spirit in the office. You know, he was supposed to write his column on music. Sometimes he would write like about a Thai restaurant that he'd been
Instead
to,
of
and we'd go, you know, and yeah, but it's a great restaurant though, you know. So yeah. So,
all right, so I'm going to play the Rocket Report,
but
and then
yeah,
we're going
no,
to talk
Bruce-
about it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is you
Okay,
predicting the upcoming revolution in the music industry in Seattle. Check this out.
Oh, all right. I don't.
Is the next big thing in rock and roll. In 1954, it was Elvis. In 1964, it was the Beatles. In 1974, it was disco. In 1984, what? Sure, the situation looks stale now, but in this year, as in all those others, some seemingly unrelated events will come together to form a movement. And right now, there are more people ready to follow some big new thing than ever before. Now, there will also be some false starts that you should be aware of. Some trends that will not work. Now, how many of you still have funny boots in your closet and permanent disfiguring injuries from riding bucking bull machines in cowboy bars? Now, thank God that didn't last too long. And we all know that the new romanticism was over just as soon as we bought our pirate suits. How many of you were fooled by that one? Yes, in this year there will be some false starts as well. That new tribalism stuff that started a little while ago, all that beating drums and traditional dances and everybody taking turns being the chief, that stuff won't last. It's going to be followed by the new Puritan movement. They already have Puritan music nights in some New York dance clubs, but this whole code of ethics stuff and no-touch dancing is going to kill the whole thing off before it gets out west. Same thing with the new hygiene movement in L.A. That's the one where everybody wears soap on a rope and squirts Physex on the floor so they can do those slide dances. It just can't last. And that genetics beat and cancer rock that's starting up in Ohio with all the mutations and asbestos guitars and PCB clothes, only a small audience could ever go for that. No, none of these will work, but towards the end of the year, the next big thing is going to hit. It's going to have all the ingredients necessary for a mass movement in rock and roll. It will have vitality, a cause, a dance step, a haircut, and a line of fashion accessories. How do I know? Because I've seen some of the stuff. The record companies haven't quite figured out the music yet, but they have all the fashion stored up and ready to go. And they let me have just a little for the Rocket Report so I can show you. Now, look what we'll be wearing in about 9 months or so. Huh? This is great. Look at the back. I don't know what this is, but this, you know, it's really great. I don't know what they do. The record companies tell me that this is going to be the biggest selling stuff they've ever had. Now, the music is going to have real anthem quality. It's going to be a real big peace thing or sort of a war march thing. They're not sure which, but the music is going to be really hot. Now, whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be great. And so just remember, you heard it here first.
Oh my God, you had
Wow.
the finger on the pulse.
I don't remember any of that. I actually kind of do. I remember. But that was all. Where did you find that, man? Is that
digging
on
around.
YouTube?
Yeah, digging around on YouTube. You
Wow,
find the coolest stuff.
That's you notice the difference in my voice. I hadn't really learned how to project. I mean, that was this voice I used to have when I was a print journalist, and it's interesting how it's changed so fundamentally.
Did you
But
do any
yeah,
like voice training?
well, by trial by fire,
Yeah.
basically, it was sort of like people like no one can understand what you're saying. But yeah, I was like, I don't know, God, I must have been, it was Jesus, I was 26 years old, I think, 25, 26 years old when I did that. It's amazing to me.
Now,
I mean, I look at myself. I don't even recognize that young man. That little kid.
I
It's
do.
it's
I
it's really
recognize it. Yeah.
it's
Do you
yeah.
remember? Okay, so when you took the job there to do that show, they were like, "We're going to build you a big set," and you were like, "No, I want a green screen." Is that what happened?
How did you know that? Did you read
I
that?
did my research, John Keister.
Okay. They yes, they said, well, we want you to. You're going to have a segment, and you're going to be talking about the news, so we can build you like this really cool little, cool set, and like a clubhouse type thing. And I was like, oh, okay. And I went back. We had some world-class designers and at the Rocket, and when I say that, very quickly, most of them went to. There was a moment a few years after that was filmed that Rocket art directors were art directing The Village Voice, Mademoiselle, Entertainment Weekly, and Vanity Fair.
Wow.
And they all had worked at the Rocket. There was an article in New York Magazine about how the Rocket was the farm team for art directors in America. It was quite amazing. But there was one very, very prescient, he was somewhat of a genius art designer. His name was Carl Schmuel. I don't know if you know that name, but
No.
he did a lot of stuff around Seattle at that time.
Oh.
And he was very good at building sort of three-dimensional sets and stuff. And I asked him, what do you think it should look like, Carl? And he said, I would imagine that they have a lot of electronic effects, kind of stuff you're doing right now, Joel, by the way, this sort of thing that you're doing right now. He said, I bet they have the ability to do stuff that they don't even use. And he said, I would recommend that you do not build a physical set, just do something where you could actually be within the medium itself like that.
Yeah.
And just use, and they had a green screen, but I didn't know what that was. And I asked about it, and I sort of figured it out on the fly that you could just do exactly what you're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
But see, what you're doing here would have been considered a revolution
Mm-hmm.
if you were doing it in 1983. and no one had done stuff like that, except, interestingly enough, car dealers. Car dealers would stand in front of the green screens, and you'd see their cars going, but look at this. We got a 79
Cal Worthington.
Buick. Yeah, Cal Worthington.
Cal
and
Worthington.
those guys, I mean,
I didn't
they're
realize
considered-
Cal Worthington wasn't like a local guy, because I then later on
Right.
saw him everywhere. He was just like a thing. Cal Worthington,
and-
Worthington
and-
Ford.
Yes, and they are, in many ways, correctly considered a joke.
Yeah.
But they did pioneer, when you think this through, they did pioneer a lot of these effects that became ubiquitous among, the more leading edge television. They were they really were the trailblazers in that sort of stuff. You can learn, Joel, from a lot of different shows. I mean, you can learn from Hee Haw. You can learn from,
I feel like that.
You can learn from shows that are ridiculed as being unhip or whatever, but the way that things are put together, if you're able to look critically at just the way shows are assembled and put together,
Yeah.
the kind of advances in culture and in design and whatnot, they come from unusual places.
I think
And
you're right.
that's something that I did learn that definitely at the Rocket and later, in other aspects of life. But you can learn a lot if you
Open your eyes.
kind of yes, if you like turn your judgment dial down.
I think
quite
that
bit.
it's a huge thing, and I've been
You can
kind
learn
of
quite a bit.
I've been kind of wrestling with it as an actor and a comedian, but especially as an actor, because you get a script and you tend to judge it when you get it. You're like, oh, this is shit. You know what I mean? And a lot of times you do that.
Yeah.
And then, but instead of like letting go, I find that letting go of your judgment, you can find things that you didn't even realize were there, or something that was actually good when you thought it was shit initially.
Yeah, there was a documentary on Napoleon Dynamite recently that I watched, that the people involved in that, when they saw the parts that they were going to have, were just, that they were like, wow, what are we going to do with this? And that they got together, and I mean, what they came up with was pretty amazing. But they, could you imagine looking at that script for the first time?
Right. Yeah.
Yes, I have seen a lot of shit, Janelle.
I've seen a lot of shit.
I've seen a lot of shit.
There's a huge connection between new wave and video art. There was a TV show on PBS that was entirely devoted to music videos from bands like Devo, framed as art.
Yeah.
Videos.
Yes, and Devo. I went to the very first Devo concerts in Seattle. As a matter of fact, Devo sought us out because of the cover that had been designed by Bob Newman. That they liked it so much they asked to see us. And if you went to a Devo concert in those days, so much of the show was projected. We were all in we're all in the theater, but a screen would lower and they would project the videos that they made, and it made this enormous effect. It was real. I mean, it was something that you wouldn't dream of doing that sort of stuff exactly today. The idea of some getting together and playing a music video of your band, but it was so revolutionary at the time.
Yeah.
And what your viewers said there about the connection between new wave and video art was very, very strong. And with MTV, the reason that those groups, I think, began to take over from the older traditional, like Pat Travers with a guitar, big fat hippies playing guitars.
Yeah.
Was that they understood the medium. I mean, they got it. It was, the kind of singer-songwriters who I loved and adored, in Crosby, Stills, and Nash or whatever, their time had sort of come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
I love their music, but
something new had to happen.
They didn't understand this medium. They didn't get it. Just as when hip hop came in, a lot of people in new wave were kind of caught flat-footed by hip hop. Not the perceptive ones, like say Mick Jones and the Clash,
Mm-hmm.
who went to Big Audio Dynamite and sort of did some really interesting things like that.
Yeah,
but new musical movements tend to catch the people who are entrenched in their moment. It tends to catch them by surprise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think MTV and all that too. Yeah. Oh, and what were you going to say?
I was asked to do. I had this gig once where, and I'd been on television for a long time and was very comfortable in my position, and like the comedy that we were doing. I was asked to host a comedy show at Bumbershoot and to be the host, and I was like, oh great, yeah, I'd love to do that. And the bill was, it started with Laura Keitlinger, who I knew, who had been on Saturday Night Live, and I enjoyed her work. But then there was people who I didn't really know. I didn't know this Patton Oswalt. Mm-hmm. And then there was Tenacious D.
Yeah.
Who's that? I didn't know those guys. Tenacious D.
Yeah.
And then it was David Cross. And
he's hilarious.
Yes. And
but like out there. He's like out there.
Yes. And they finished off with Margaret Cho, who I knew.
She's great.
But these, I started off doing my comedy, and then, Laura Keitlinger came on, and I could hold my own with her, but then all of a sudden it's Tenacious D, and it goes up a notch, and they were doing some stuff that I was like, wow, these guys are really inventive. And so I went on and did a little bit more comedy, and then introduced him, and then all of a sudden Patton Oswalt comes on, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy is unbelievable. And then as it marched up there, I realized, man, I don't know what I am so far behind these new young, comics that are coming up. These guys are so far ahead of what I'm doing. that I was stunned. I was like, I mean, the art form has moved so much farther than when I was, when I had gotten into it, that I was just flabbergasted. I was just so like, ugh, wow, these guys, these young people are.
When was that? Was that
tearing it up.
recently? Or
no. I mean, you couldn't get a bill.
this was when these people had not been.
No, this is when they were first starting out.
They were first starting
a
out.
long time ago. Yeah.
Wow.
It was like, I don't know, 89 or so.
Yeah, so you started to see that kind of turn. So tell
Yeah,
me,
it was
I want to go
amazing.
back to where we were, because I want to talk about like when you got onto Almost Live and how that happened from this Rocket Report. Rocket Report seems like it was a little bit more halfway serious, halfway funny, kind of a
Yes.
report on what's going on.
Yes,
in
it was.
the music
yes.
scene.
And then with Almost Live, I realized that, well, I'm just going to do straight kind of comedy about it. Started off actually somewhat similar to some of it was based on things that were going on around town and things like that. Like, they just put these stickers all over dumpsters that said, "Do not play on or around." It was like some new.
My friend had
safety
that
thing, and
on his car.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so I was like, well, okay, great. So I, jumped in there with a Monopoly board and, was playing, doing all sorts of, like stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
and there was a sign up at Gasworks Park that warning people not to eat the dirt because it was a hazardous. And so I got a can of chocolate frosting and sort of, cut it in with, like, I was scooped up some mud on the ground. Then there was an edit and I had like this chocolate fry and I'm going to eat the mud. You can't tell me,
Mud.
I'm
That was
free
a real
American,
sign put up by the park.
Yeah, they said, "Do not eat the dirt." Don't eat it. And I was like, you have to put a sign up that says this. So it was all based on real things that were happening. But then it went, went on further, and Ross and the guys there were a bit reticent about me at the beginning because Ross was a headliner at that point.
So that was Ross Schaefer. He was already hosting the show when you got there?
He was hosting the show, and he was a headliner in comedy, and I was an MC in those days, and he was like, well, why would I be working with this guy, But then he saw that I was, I kind of got the whole the way television comedy worked, where he was kind of doing more club comedy, and then I helped him move the show towards more stuff that was based on television. And Miami Vice, the television show, was really popular. Then we did a segment called Ballard Vice, and it was, the same kind of cuts and real, quick editing. And he didn't quite understand it at first, but once he realized I was good for the show, he really got behind me, and we became very good friends. And although we played like adversaries on the show, but it, without Ross, there could have been no Almost Live. He was the guy who anchored it and was on there for the first 4 years and got it solidly in there. And then, none of us, nobody who came out of Almost Live could ever have gotten their career out of it if it hadn't been for Ross. He was the original rock that the thing was based on, and he was the one who promoted Bill Nye as he had a radio show, and he had Bill on as Ross came up with the Bill Nye the Science Guy idea.
That's something I wonder. Like Bill Nye, where did he come from? Was he like at the Science Center or something, or what?
Well, he actually, he
spawned?
was working at the Science Center.
I think I saw him at the Science Center when I was like a little kid.
Yeah, he was a volunteer at the Science Center, but we knew him from the clubs. And Bill and I had gotten to be good friends, and I encouraged him to come work on the show. I used him. The very first segment he did on television was on a bit that I was doing, and we brought him in because he was a very good performer. A little weird, a little wacky. His writing was a little bit.
I want to show a little clip of Bill Nye doing Speedwalker, because that was one thing that I thought was hilarious.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay,
Speedwalker. Okay.
The reporter, Jeff Bimmel. The story, Seattle's ever-changing skyline. And what better place to view it than Seattle's most famous landmark, the Space Needle. Even on a blustery day, from up here, the city looks serene, secure, safe. But then, my God, someone's trying to steal the Space Needle. I've got to do something. How long does it take for the elevator to get all the way down?
41 seconds.
I'm sorry, ma'am, that's just not fast enough. This looks like a job for... Speed Walker.
Yes, it's Speed Walker, a physically fit superhero who fights crime while maintaining strict adherence to the regulations of the International Race Walking Association. Heel toe, heel toe. Speed Walker.
Anyway, you get the idea of that.
Yes.
was
Yes,
hilarious.
you noticed there, as Bill came in his shorts, heading towards the camera, the stranger wrote, "The real show is in his pants." Wrote that, and Bill
The Stranger
wasn't
is the
wearing
local
a jock.
newspaper.
Yes, yes. Bill did not wear a jock in that, and Bill really enjoyed those comments, by the way.
Yeah.
No matter what anyone says, Bill loved that people were commenting on that. So, but
too
that
funny.
was an idea that Joe Guppy came up with. And oh yes, oh my gosh, I see the reaction to that.
The
But,
Stranger is in his pants.
not yes, okay. Well, it was right there. You saw the video.
Yeah.
But Joe Guppy came up with that idea, and that was one of those things where, because we were talking about how crazy the speed walking.
Yeah, I remember
events
speed walking. We used to always talk about that, joke around about how we were into speed walking because it seemed so
Yeah,
ridiculous to
yeah.
us. And we would say, look out, because when I speed walk, it gets really dangerous. I've
Yes,
run
right.
people
And so we
over.
did-
I've walked through
yeah.
walls. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I was you're right, and so that was a real. I thought, as a concept, was very, very funny. Really, was a favorite of the of our fans. And Bill did. You should have done the one where there was a threat to blow up the kingdom. There was one where like he thwarted a bombing, to destroy the kingdom, which a lot of people said, well, we were just a few years early on that one. So, yeah.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. So, okay, you also had this. So, one of the things I wanted to say is your show followed a certain structure, right? And I guess it was sort of based on already late night television. Did you find that structure worked, or did you create your own structure? And what does almost live mean? Was it just because there were taped segments, it wasn't completely live?
Well, okay. One of the reasons it followed a structure that was very common to late night television was because we shot it as if it was live. We did not stop down. We almost never stopped down. The show was shot as if it was live, and so at the very end, there would be we'd wave goodbye to the audience and stuff like that, and it'd be like about a minute, and sometimes we were criticized for pretending like we were like Saturday Night Live, and it all goes the same way. It's this segment and then, and they even come on and do that ridiculous goodbye to the audience thing in the end, like as if they're SNL. And people basically didn't understand that you can't, if you're shooting live, you can't time things out, and there's always
for commercials and such.
Yeah, and there's always like a minute, 30 seconds to a minute that you don't really know how much time you're gonna have left. And so sometimes we just say, "That's it, goodbye," and sometimes we'd have to fill a minute, just depending on how things timed out. And so that structure goes because that's kind of the way you have to do it. I mean, if we did the show the way Monty Python did, they can edit, and they could go and they would just shoot their bits in front of a live audience, then they would edit it, and they had that, I mean, it was a brilliant show, but it had the benefit of being able to edit, and we did not have that. So is that, and Almost Live. Look, the thing is, we were like, what are we going to call it? Are we going to, there was things like, Take 5, which actually became the name of a show recently on on King, and Rainy Day Gazette. You know, that was one of them. And,
Really?
you know, things like that, or like, you know,
Seattle people have never been good at naming things.
Yeah, Cold Feet, or like Puddle. You know, Rain. There was all sorts of rain plays on rain, and
we have a viewer from Belgium here saying he's very much enjoying the show. He was in our high school class when we were growing up in Edmonds. Yeah, and
Sven de Kock. I think Sven has. He's beaten me with the funniest last name.
That's
I
right.
think.
You guys are in a contest.
Sven de Kock commenting on John Keister.
That's right.
Good. All right, I like it.
Only
I like
on
it, yeah.
Lunch Therapy.
So Sven, he went to your school?
Yeah, he went to Woodway High School, where we went.
Woodway, okay,
Yeah.
and he's now where?
He's in Belgium. He was the exchange
Belgium.
student. He was the lovable
All
exchange
right.
student who knew more about pop culture in America than we did.
Sven, listen, hey, have some frites on
Some
me.
pommes frites.
I've been to your beautiful country, and I had a lot of frites. I had many
We were
frites.
talking about that the other day on the show, how they eat them with mayonnaise.
Yes, yeah, oh yeah.
How they get away with that, I
look,
don't know.
Okay, people may joke about that, but I actually had them over there.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. They're wonderful. They're
Delicious.
You can any French fry. You talked about your money getting sucked into Dick's, into the window, like in Dick's fries.
Yeah.
The thing to me about Dick's that I could never figure this out is that there was a gap between where the fries were and the window, and at any Dick's you'd see all these fries that would go over and be trapped
Disgusting.
between the window and where the fry, and I would like,
Disgusting.
why can't they close the 1 inch or the half inch? Okay, so Matt, you're right. Yes, mayo. Yes, yes.
So
they
people are
fucking
getting
drive
rowdy
that
about
shit.
the
Yes,
mayo
okay,
on
I
the
see what you're
fries.
saying. Yeah. Anyway.
But
Anyway.
So there were lots of things about Dick's Drive-In that didn't make sense, but I think they actually did it just for effect because they knew most of the people that were going there were completely drunk.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So they did.
Me included. Yeah. I was in line at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I need 7 cheeseburgers.
Right.
I'd be like, yeah.
On 45th, and you're there, and it sucks your
the
money
one on
away, and they
45th.
that was probably just part of the fun of, they've got a good laugh with these drunks.
I don't do this anymore. I'm not like this anymore, Joel, but
Yeah.
there was a night I spent at a friend's house where I woke up and I said, well, that was pretty wild last night. And they said, yeah, well, it would have been better if you hadn't got into a fight with that guy at Dick's. And I went,
Oh, no.
we went to Dick's?
Yeah, that was always
And
the
then I had this
blackout.
memory of, and then I suddenly, this memory of like, clung, and me looking through the window, and I'd backed up into the sign, and hit it with my car, and and that was the only memory I had. Was that.
Yeah,
but I'm not like
good.
that.
No, me
kids,
either. Me either.
Don't
kids.
do that. No,
I'm not like that
kids,
either.
No.
Speaking of that, you did this thing called the lame list, and I want to show that.
The
for a
lame
second.
list, yes. Yeah,
And,
sure. Go ahead.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
And now, the lame list, or What's Weak This Week, brought to you by America's heavy metal community.
Lame! Nordstrom wouldn't let us sit on Santa!
Lame! That wallows in lameness.
Getting a gift certificate for the Squire shop!
Lame!
Dancer and Prancer!
Totally lame!
Watching that Noralco ad with the shaver going up and down in the snow when you're about to hurl!
Lame! Lame!
Lame! People who call Hanukkah Chanukah!
That was rather lame. That was, in all my years, that pretty much take the top of the list for lame.
On Christmas morning, as your family gathers around the tree, they all look at you and say, "This is an intervention!"
Lame! Totally lame!
That's hilarious. Yay.
That's enough. Boy, the ones you've dug up are pretty good.
That's pretty good, though. So
I
that was
forgot
like a
that
running gag
intervention
that you
joke.
did with the local bands?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, no. It was very, very. When we were on Comedy Central, that I think was the most popular bit that we had. You probably noticed okay. Thank you, Sven. Yes. Hi. Hello and hello in Belgium. Anyway, you saw Kim Thiel from Soundgarden was there. There was also guys from Panic and Forced Entry and then Jeff Gilbert, who would wrangle all of them. Who basically the guy from Grasshopper, I'm sure knows who Jeff Gilbert.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure he does.
Jeff Gilbert is, but yeah, it was a thing that it just I don't know. I just thought of it like that we could get these guys together because we'd shot some other stuff, and I just thought they were really they had a really great quality, and we were looking for a segment like that where we could comment very quickly. And I heard people say that it was the only segment that anyone had ever seen that actually. Okay, now I'm going to seem very conceited at this point, but
Do it.
but that it was the only one that came close to Letterman's top 10 that actually worked. A lot of people tried these list-based things, and that particular segment aired on a show on Fox called Haywire every week. The Lame List did.
Oh, really?
And yeah,
Wow.
and that got the attention of a lot of people, and that plus the segment Billy Kwan on the Fox show Haywire is what got us the national show.
So this is when you got a Comedy Central show.
Yes.
Tell us about how that worked out and what happened with that. Like, what did they
Well,
just notice that you were doing these great shows in Seattle, and they like asked you, or did you pitch it, or what happened?
We put together a. I asked for permission from the general manager at King. Would you give me the authority to speak for the show, to go out and try to get a deal? And if I do get a deal, I'll bring it to you for your approval. And if not, no harm done. And he said, sure, I'll give you 3 months. And so I had this 3-month window in which me, John Keister, could go out and act as an advocate for the show and see what kind of a deal I could get. And there were a lot of people that I knew in LA because people had already migrated from the show down there. And we put together a reel. We had really great material, and we shopped it around. And Aaron Spelling's franchise company called World Vision, not the charity, which, but there was a syndication company. And Aaron Spelling, as you know, has a lot of muscle behind it, and they took it and sold it. And at first we were trying to syndicate it, but then it ended up on Comedy Central. But it had just the right material at just the right time because Comedy Central was looking for stuff, and it had the muscle that Aaron Spelling, could provide, and that's
that
how
was
it got
during
on.
Beverly Hills 90210 or that kind of period.
Oh, I
time period
mean,
where it
look,
was just huge?
he had every other show was an Aaron Spelling show, but yes, 90210, yes, it was on during that time, sure.
And then what was that
So
like working for Comedy Central? All of a sudden you had a different.
Well,
different overlords.
The executive that was assigned to us had been one of the main writers on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which I loved growing up as a kid. Her name was Gloria Banta, and she was a very insightful and she was a very gentle executive producer. I liked her quite a bit, and she guided the show. She looked at pretty much every segment that we had. She viewed everything and gave a lot of advice, and we had some very good people that had formerly worked on the show. An executive producer, his name was Jim Sharp. He became later the head of development at Comedy Central. There's a lot of people that came through the show who went into behind the scenes television.
Really?
And we had like Joel and Bill and Ross went on to big careers, and things like that. But there were a lot of behind the scenes people that ended up in the industry as well. And I thought Comedy Central treated us very, very well. They treated us better than King did, to be quite honest. And if we won awards, we'd walk in and there'd be these big bouquets of flowers and presents and stuff. And with King, it was just sort of like, well, you always win the award, so what? I'm
No,
It was really like that. They was sort of like, well, you guys. You don't need any promotion.
Were you guys just sort of like
in
the back room, and they were like, just keep that door locked?
Well, to be fair about it, they really didn't. I mean, yes, the answer is yes, but to be fair about that, they didn't really know how to manage what we did. They didn't understand it, but they, so I mean, they left us alone, which we didn't get a lot of support, but then again, we didn't get a lot of interference either. So,
and was that good? Do you think, to having something where there wasn't as much pressure by suits?
It was extremely good. Yeah, they didn't interfere, but then we could have really used, as the technology upgraded, we could have really used some better cameras. And, I mean, we started to lag really far behind the state of the art in terms of video quality and stuff like that. But the writing was still, I think, top notch. Yeah. And that, I think, has been borne out by how these things live on in YouTube, and the kind of writing that Bob Nelson, who came out of the show, was nominated for an Academy Award for his writing. And
he wrote the movie Nebraska.
Yes, he did. And Bill, the stuff that was written on his show was from people who worked on Almost Live, and then the production design was put together by people from Almost Live, and that show changed the world. If we did nothing on the show other than launch his career, Bill is actually one of the few people that I've met who have actually, he has had the ability to kind of have an effect on the history of the world, I think.
There was just a chat in the room last night. My wife and I were watching the news, and he was there as a consultant.
Yes, and he's
like across so many different platforms, and
and he's leading the charge on climate, pushing to take care of climate change. And the thing is, he inspired thousands, if not tens of thousands, of young people to get into careers in science when they might not have even considered that. People all over the world, know him. So. So that cool. I take tremendous pleasure that I had something to do with launching that career, and Bob also, because I think Bob's one of the greatest writers I've ever met, and they would not have had their careers had they not come through from this little venue in Seattle. So I feel very, very proud of
and Joel McHale too. He's hilarious.
And Joel's done very, very well.
He's
Yes.
I want to show another clip of something that I just like. It's Cops in Leavenworth. Leavenworth is a town that people go to just to kind of have this kind of German flavor. I won't play the whole thing, but I'll play some of it here.
Sure.
So this is another segment that you would do. You do cops in local places, and that was one of the great things about you. And maybe that's one of the unique things that you brought to the show was you knew the area so well that you could make fun of all the different towns and stuff. And that was what for watching it locally was really exciting because of that. Because it was
no other place in America like Leavenworth. No,
right. So here's Leavenworth, cops in Leavenworth.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys.
Cops in Leavenworth.
Most of the time, Leavenworth is a nice, peaceful, Bavarian-themed tourist town, but when there's trouble in this nice, peaceful, Bavarian-themed tourist town, then I have to crack down.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
Why a Bavarian theme? It's just something we decided on, that's all. Yeah, we voted on it a couple years ago. Bavaria came in first, Egypt was second, and I think third was Tacoma. Yeah, so we decided that Bavarian... Wait a minute. Hey, excuse me, hey, whoa, can we stop here? Come here for a minute. You leaving town here?
Yeah.
Isn't there something you're forgetting?
No.
Where's your souvenirs? The posters, the pennants, the dorky little hats?
We were just talking.
Postcards. You got little hanging little wooden things here like that? You got nothing.
Oh.
You think you're leaving here without that? I want you to turn around. I want you to get in those stores. I don't want you to come back here unless your arms are loaded. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir, we will.
All right, let's get go. Come on, move.
Thank you, officer.
Now.
Okay.
People like that make me sick.
That was hilarious.
Yes.
I love
that.
Yay!
That was it.
I got to have my applause going here.
It's a long haul. Before we go, I want to point out that right here that I'm having an implant put in, and this is the socket. Yeah, the socket. In case people think that somebody punched me. Although people
there
do
was
that all the
Dick's
time,
driving incident. I know. It could have been from that.
Yes, I'm having a tooth fitted next week that the socket had to grow in. So
finally. Yeah, I think it's a good look, though. It's a good comedy look.
Thank you.
It's worked for lots of people.
It's working for me. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to end the show. Like you say,
Okay.
This has been so much fun talking with you today. And I know my audience really enjoyed it. And I want to say that a lot of the things that you were saying about using the medium and looking at things without judgment and seeing what is, where the gold is just a really great point that you made. And also I want to thank you for all the comedy that you provided in Seattle and will provide in the future as well. And also for me, it was sort of inspirational to see you working in Seattle because I, growing up, always wanted to be an actor and always wanted to be a performer, but I didn't know anybody that was really doing that. And the local people that were doing this kind of stuff were truly inspirational to me because I was like, oh, these are people from my area that can do this stuff too.
Right.
And because we didn't have a lot of that. I mean, we had like Jimi Hendrix, and we had people that we could look to. But growing up in Seattle, for me at that time period, felt like we were kind of on the sidelines. So everything else was going on elsewhere.
Real quickly, so Ross, big motivational speaker, one of the top corporate speakers in the world, came out of that. Jim Sharp, who was the executive in development at Comedy Central. There's Brooks Macbeth, who I didn't mention, who was one of the main writers on Mad TV. Lauren Weedman, who I didn't mention, who was on Hung, a lot of the HBO shows, Looking, all
great.
these, done a lot
show.
of great film roles.
Yeah.
There was who was that? And also on Euphoria, and Bill, of course, with his stuff.
You guys were like a huge feeder to
Tracy
Hollywood.
Conway, who has done a lot for the heart associations around the world because of her heart issues that happened on the show. We've got Bob, who of course was nominated for Best Academy Award for Best Screenplay, and let's see, Steve Wilson, who now directs. He was our director. He directs so many shows, around. He's one of the few remaining people who direct multiple camera direct. And
we have a Nancy Guppy fan.
Nancy Guppy, who has her art show, Art Zone, and it just kind of. I mean, I'm leaving people out. Jim McKenna and Aaron Gottlieb, who have McKenna Gottlieb Productions, who produced the Bill Nye the Science Guy show and Biz Kids and a lot of other really great educational television. All of those people came through this one conduit, which basically that could happen in any city if they allowed a show like this to exist. It's just very difficult for executives in local television to really understand it and manage it.
My wife is saying
we got in and.
My wife is saying I have to look these people up here in Los Angeles.
And Pat, of course, Pat Passion.
I gotta look up.
Who
Pat.
you had on? Who you had?
Pat is hilarious. I think he is so funny. I would love it if the two of you would come back on the show and do like a sketch. That would be like my dream.
Well, we live quite a
remotely
distance away now.
Remotely.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay.
But anyway, I don't know, and I would like to be in it as well. So.
Okay, Joel.
All right, thanks. There, I got agreement. Everybody heard that.
Okay.
I think they heard it. All right, so thanks again for being on the show. I'm gonna spare you the dance break. At the end of this thing, I play music, and we dance. But I'm not gonna make you dance unless you want to.
Oh,
dance.
good. I don't. No. I don't want to dance. No.
Guinel says there will never be another show like Almost Live. Yeah, it's true.
Thank you, Guinel. Thank you.
It's totally true. All right. So I hope that you won't be a stranger like the magazine Stranger to the show.
I won't be. No. You dug up. I gotta hand it to you, Joel. I have not. A lot of those things. I'm not sure where you dug those up exactly, but those are not the typical segments that I'm asked to comment on, and that was actually very great. I'd forgotten about a lot of that stuff. That was great.
I appreciate that. We try. Me and just my assistant Boney here, who happens to be a skeleton. We work really hard here, and thanks for the kudos. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Right. And we'll see you soon. This has been John Keister, and over and out. Okay. I'm going to set this up because last week we had Cynthia Levin on the show, and she had mentioned that she was a huge Kinks fan. So I looked around for some Lola, and I got the Mona Lisa twins, who've agreed to play their song on the show, or let me play their song on the show. So ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Mona Lisa twins playing Lola by the Kinks. Dance 'em if you got 'em. Thanks everybody for joining in on the show today.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho where you drink champagne and it tastes just like Coca-Cola. C-O-L-A Cola. She walked up to me and she asked me to dance. I asked her her name and in a dark brown voice she said Lola. L-O-L-A Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Well, I'm not the world's most physical guy, but when she squeezed me tight, she nearly broke my spine. Oh, my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand why she walked like a woman but talked like a man. Oh, my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Well, we drank champagne and danced all night under electric candlelight. She picked me up and sat me on her knee. She said, little boy, won't you come home with me? Well, I'm not the world's most passionate guy, but when I looked in her eyes, well, I almost fell for my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola.
Mona Lisa twins live in Liverpool,
Lola, Lola,
but I think they might be from someplace else.
Lola, Lola, Lola.
Same as where the Flock of Seagulls are from, and that other band, the Atolls.
I pushed her away. I walked to the door. I fell to the floor. I got down on my knees. Then I looked at her and she at me. Well, that's the way that I wanted to stay, and I always wanted to be that way for my Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Girls will be boys and boys will be girls. It's a mixed up, my lap shook up world except for Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Well, I left home just a week before, and I'd never ever kissed a woman before. But Lola smiled and took me by the hand. She said, little boy, I'm gonna make you a man. Well, I'm not the world's most masculine man, but I know what I am and I'm glad I'm a man. And so is Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola. Lola, Lola, Lola.
All right, thanks television show for being here and for the smiley face. Thank you, Mona Lisa twins. Thank you, John Keister. Thank you, Matt Wright. Thank you, Sven de Kock from all the way from Belgium. Camila Lopez, Danielle, Loretta, everybody. This has been Lunch Therapy. Next week, we are going to have, we have a real surprise on Friday. I'm gonna let this, I'll tell you on Monday what's happening because it's too exciting to tell all of it here. We'll see you next week on Lunch Therapy.